All right, everyone, we've gotten to the good stuff. Mr. Loebner and I's favorite time of year, the wars.
Oh, yeah.
And here we are, the start of World War One. And just based on what you see in those pictures, we've got aliens from another country and fighting in ditches, right? Is that what's going on there? That's what it looks like.
Aliens from another country or another planet?
Oh, another planet.
So we have
Whatever.
the poison gas masks
Yep.
here, which we'll talk about a little bit later in section 2. You don't want to
Trench
be caught
warfare.
without that.
No.
And of course the trench warfare on the other side of that.
Yeah, I wish I had some of those masks for when the cooking classes are going on. Woo, not so pleasant down here.
So one of the most important wars in history, obviously, you need to know World War I to understand World War II.
Yes.
So there's a lot to say with this chapter.
And just as an aside, this was known as the Great War because they didn't know there was going to be a World War II.
That is true. It's also called the World War.
Ooh.
Okay, here's a map of Europe about 100 years ago. This is in 1914, and we don't have as many countries in
No.
Europe as we do today. We have Britain here, France, Spain, those haven't changed too
Yeah.
much. As you can see, Germany extends way into where Poland is
I was
today.
just going to say, we don't have larger Poland, Austria-Hungary Empire, or
Yeah.
Empire isn't there.
That's a big empire. And then some of these countries here, their boundaries are going to shift. Romania, Bulgaria, Serbia, Greece, and we're going to see a united Slavic country at the end of this war. Italy's pretty much the same.
Yeah.
So these are the major
Russia.
players of the war, and of course Russia.
All right, so some of the causes. We talked about the main causes, M-A-I-N, but unfortunately, Mr. Loebner doesn't know how to spell. So he started with nationalism, and really simply think of a nation and deep, devotion and pride for your country. And this pride is what drove imperialism, wanting to fight for those countries in Africa and all around the world. And it drives militarism because you're proud of your country, but you also want to protect it. So you need that strong military in order to do that. So you see these rivalries forming, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the major players, Britain, we've talked about so many times, having the largest navy. But then we've got this new area, the Balkans, and pride for your culture. And the idea here is wanting to bring all of the Slavic people, this one ethnic group, under one border.
Okay. And we see a lot of competition for these lands. Russia and Austria-Hungary want to control the Slavic area. Germany's interested. They want to build a railroad all the way through to get into the Middle East. So
Smart
there's
idea.
a lot going on. This is just an image from the Franco-Prussian War, which we'll talk about in class, but not here.
It's boring.
Imperialism, we've been talking about that for the last 3 weeks, but it's one of the causes of World War I. Countries in Europe are competing for the same lands in Africa and Asia, and sometimes they want the same land. It could almost lead to war. France and Germany almost fought twice over Morocco.
And we talked a little bit about this just, briefly, even when we did communism. Part of the reason some of those things don't work is because this sort of greed that people have. And if you see someone who's successful, you kind of want that success too. And it may mean taking it, like those colonies.
That is
A lot of
true.
gold and diamonds down in Africa.
Militarism, that is glorifying military power.
See the word military?
Oh, that's right. So using force to solve your problems. That's how I used to live my life. But
I know.
I'm a changed man.
But he got arrested, so, he's got to keep a low profile now.
That happens. So you always have an army ready for war at all
Exactly.
times. And by 1914, all of these major powers had large armies. Britain had the best navy, not so much a big army. And
Which
Britain,
makes sense, surrounded by water.
That's true.
Protect yourself.
And Britain had a rule, the two-nation standard. Whatever the second and third largest navies were, Britain had to have more than those two combined. So they were keeping tabs on what the Germans were doing and the French and all these other countries in Europe.
And you'll see later when Germans start building up their navy, it's going to cause a little concern for the British, and they're going to want to increase theirs too. So again, you see this tension forming.
And again, with the Industrial Revolution, Germany and Britain emerged as the two most powerful countries, and they are in competition with each other. They want to dominate Europe in many, many ways.
And I think that they want to avoid war, probably. They want to maintain their power, but try to avoid war, because it could lead to, a lot of problems. But
That is true.
unfortunately, that's not going to happen.
So as a result of this industrialization, we're going to have lots of new weapons of World War I. This is an early version of the tank, which came out with the British in 1916, and devastating effects it could have on a war. The British Dreadnought, which was launched in 1906.
Crazy. 1906, that huge boat being
know.
built. Fascinating.
Which was a huge accomplishment for the British. Very powerful ship.
All right, so we've got alliances. So think of the allies. I've said this quote many, many times. The enemy of your enemy is your friend. So working together, forming these agreements, treaties, whatever it is, to sort of keep peace, but have that protection in case something does happen. For example, Otto von Bismarck, way before Kaiser Wilhelm, and had issues with France, and so there's this constant, I feel like, tension between Germany and France. And the Germans, usually their goals in making these alliances is to isolate France and make sure that there's no issues between them. So you see the Triple Alliance being formed: Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Italy, and then France, Britain, and Russia eventually joined together for the Triple Entente, which Entente means alliance or group in French.
So like you were saying, to isolate France, which is here, Germany has an alliance with Austria and Italy.
Hi, Mr. Watson.
Isolate that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, guest appearance.
So these three nations here will be known as the Triple Alliance. And then on the other side, we have the Triple Entente.
That purplish color.
And that's Britain, France, and then Russia over here.
Yes. Already seen problems for Germany right off the bat.
Yeah. And then we're going to have a big issue in the Balkans. The Balkans is the region in southeastern Europe. It was nicknamed the powder keg of Europe because it's ready to explode.
Yes.
And you can see Austria-Hungary has land here. This is Serbia, Greece, Bulgaria, Romania. The old Ottoman Empire has been declining.
Going back, back, and back.
And in 1912, the First Balkan War broke out, and these countries here broke free from Ottoman rule. The following year, in 1913, the Second Balkan War broke out.
Look at you.
I know. And these countries turned on each other.
Showing off.
And then, in 1914, a Third Balkan War broke out, and that is when Austria and Serbia had a problem. And
Take Bosnia.
This all started in 1908 when Austria formally took over Bosnia, which outraged Serbia because most of the people that lived in Bosnia were Serbians.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about this similar idea with Russia and Crimea even today. So the Russians going into Crimea, many of the people living in Crimea and eastern Ukraine are ethnically Russian, and so they want to sort of come back to their heritage, I guess we could say.
That's true. So Russia is going to offer Serbia support, and Germany is going to back up Austria-Hungary, so these smaller countries now feel like, hey, I can do whatever I want, I got protection. And that allows them to be aggressive.
Remember we said alliances, that little problem between two countries ends up becoming a problem with all these countries as their friends come in to help out.
Okay, so on June 28th, 1914, Austria's number 2 guy, Franz Ferdinand, who was next in line to become the new emperor, he went to Sarajevo to check out the weapons, and this was a city controlled by Austria that was a Serbian town, and they were offended that he went there, and he actually picked the date, June 28th, when Serbs lost back in the 1399.
Yeah, kind of a slap in the face.
It was like messing with New York City on September 11th. Like you don't do that. So the Black Hand, which was a nationalist organization, they are going to carry out the assassination of Franz Ferdinand. And the murderer was Gavrilo Princip.
Just a little aside, there were 7 assassins, and I guess in Sarajevo there were 7 bridges, and like they were all kind of staged in that area. And at one point they'd thrown a bomb at his car, and it bounced off the hood and exploded, but injured some people. The Archduke, not really having any fear, I guess, continued on his day, went to some speeches, and he left. And he went one way, and I heard he was going to the hospital to actually visit some people who were injured by the bombing. And he had stopped, and Gavrilo was on the sidewalk and literally looked and put 2 shots into the car and killed him and his wife. So it was crazy, like complete luck and accident almost that this happened, and that they were actually successful. But,
that's a great story.
Yeah, thanks.
Poor Sophie, his wife, was murdered as well.
Yep.
There is the Archduke.
They are just
right
probably
here.
A few hours before their
it's
death.
Crazy. It's like the image of Kennedy and his wife.
Yeah. Yep.
Uh-oh.
Ooh, that's a good.
The wrong way.
Good comparison. Yeah.
So we have Archduke here, his wife Sophie, and then here is Gavrilo Princip, the assassin, who was being carted away, and he was beaten up pretty badly.
Yeah.
He's going to die in jail. So Germany is going to issue a blank check to Austria in dealing with Serbia now, and for the next month,
do what you got to do.
The July crisis. We don't know what's going to happen in Europe. Austria presents Serbia with an ultimatum. You have to do all of these demands. Serbia agrees to most of them, except for one, which we'll talk about in class. Yeah. And exactly 1 month later, July 28th, 1914, Austria declared war on Serbia.
Officially beginning World War I. So crazy. One demand. Really? No, you know what?
I know.
We don't care.
So, we will talk more in class.